For instance, we have Zurich representatives here today, and I know that one of the opportunities they want to take on is to get a dumpster in to pick up the limbs and the leaves and stuff that the absentee loaners come in and leave piles, and then the piles are just sitting around. So that's just one example. They can do door-to-door handouts of flyers and encourage people to do work. They could do a demonstration in the community. They can even hire a chipper. So there's a number of options that qualify them to recertify their Firewise classification. In the case of Little Valley, it's a little different. Teddy Crumb did intend to be here today, but he got a last-minute phone call saying that he wasn't going to be able to make it. And that's a bigger request that goes towards treatment within 200 feet of houses, and most of that is handwork, and it goes hand in hand with the project that we have going on there now with the large fuel treatment using chippers and skidders and shears, and trying to get work done within the WUI of that community. But we need to focus on that 200-foot area around the existing structures. The second part of it is the CWPP process. That's Community Wildfire Protection Plan process, and there is an MOU that establishes that process, which the county is a signatory to. And the Lassen County Fire Safety Council takes the lead in pulling together the working group, which are all signatories to that, each year to develop a fuel treatment plan for the county, and that's what we all work on. So that's a very important process. It's part of the National Fire Plan, very important to the federal agencies. In fact, in the case of BLM, their fuel treatment funding is contingent upon being a part of this program and having their projects identified as part of the plan. So it is a fairly important process, and it also helps us get grants through the federal agencies. And most of that focus is around the WUI, which is the immediate area around the communities where work needs to get done to help defend that community from an approaching wildfire. And some of those WUIs can go out to a couple of miles, depending on the terrain and the fuels and that sort of thing. The Firewise part of it is another very big thing. The Fire Safety Council has taken a very proactive role in identifying Firewise communities in this county, and I think we believe we have 10 at this point. I don't know of any other county in the state that has that many. In fact, some are working on it. And nationally, I don't know of any county that has that many communities. But it also requires some continued effort by the communities, and that's why we have the green waste days up here on the top of the request. The communities actually have to show that they have contributed at least $2 per resident of that community towards a fire prevention effort, and that has to be certified. And like I say, they can rent chippers, they can go door to door, they can have a green waste day, they can rent dumpsters. But to get recertified as a Firewise community, they actually have to show an effort of $2 per resident within that community. And it is a nationally recognized effort handled by the National Fire Protection Association. In fact, USAA Insurance allows a 5% reduction on insurance premiums if they're a Firewise community. So that's all pretty important. With that, I don't have anything else to say. It's just kind of a general overview. Oh, the one other thing I would like to say, going back to the CWPP, is that Shasta County recently contracted with a local RCD to update their CWPP plan. A lot of counties are really struggling with this because it takes an effort to put this together, and Shasta County has committed $50,000 towards that effort. That's how important it is to them. So are there any questions or comments?
Yeah, I got a question. Being how we're in the drop with the security, the drop and whatnot, are they doing anything to lower that $2 per household?
Nothing that, no. I don't think, we're not aware of any effort to do that. That's kind of a national standard that's been set up. It not only applies to California, but it applies to the other states involved in it. It's set by NFPA. So Supervisor I don't know how they would, make a special compensation for an area that's in a drought area when the rest of the nation might not be in a drought area. It's just a national.
No, I just didn't know if they would have a special. And then on your little graph here, you have with your dates, with your calendar, the months of performance, you have blue boxes and yellow boxes. What's the?
Well, it goes through 2 fiscal years. So the blue boxers are the efforts that we would make this fiscal year, and the yellow are the ones that we would make in the next fiscal year. Yeah, and we're actually a little bit behind the 8 ball, and that's why you'll see some of the yellow slopping in one place over the next fiscal year, because we have an effort to make this with the 10 communities. Some are a little further ahead than others. They've established a Firewise board, which is a requirement. That's one of the requirements. It would be a group of community representatives that would oversee the Firewise program within the community. And we have, in our process of doing projects within those communities, have completed a risk assessment for the community. So that risk assessment becomes the action plan for the community. And when we apply for a Firewise community, those are the only 2 things we have to do. They have to have a board, and a risk assessment has to be completed. But each year, they have to have a Firewise day to get that recertification with the effort that we talked about. So that's.
Richard?
Sure. Rita, I just wanted to point out the Fire Safe Council essentially acts as a pass-through agency for almost all of these funds. In the case of the treatment implementation, they hire contractors to do the removal of the slash and so forth. In the case of the CWPP and the recertifications, it's my understanding that that's basically a pass-through to Mr. Esgate for those
Carry on those programs.
I just wanted to point that out.
What's in our Title III budget now?
And this will be for next year.
That'll be for funds we haven't received yet.
Yeah, this request is for $122,000. That doesn't totally exhaust the fund, but that's the majority of it. I don't have the exact figure.
What other projects might there be?
We don't have any other requests at this point. In the past, there's an ability to use for some law enforcement activities on
I think we funded 1 year doing a huge amount, but it's only used when it needs to be used, and it's designed to go over multiple years. So I think Dean's covered for at least the next few years. And I just want to say, first of all, I want to thank Mr. Kiefer for stepping in and providing the leadership he has to this organization. We've had some issues in the recent past dealing with the transparency and the accountability. We had issues brought from the community in terms of complaints, and how that kind of spun out of whack, is everybody's version is probably correct, but nobody's. I think it was mutually the responsibility involved. But the good thing I got from the meeting that we had is I think we're back together, and I think we're going in the same direction. I think there's a strong commitment to see this program succeed. It's been successful in the past, and I think they've provided all the necessary documentation in the file, so there's no questions left. If somebody has an issue or concern, there's a protocol for how that would be addressed, and I think it was decided that Mr. Shaw in the county administrative office would be kind of the point person to handle and be the interface for that, and I think that's a good thing. And so I'm excited and happy to see that we have a kind of a return to normalcy in terms of the relationship, and I appreciate the effort that the Fire Safe Council put forth, and particularly Mr. Kiefer's leadership of that, because I think this is so desperately needed in our communities, and it's a way to use these funds to the maximum extent possible.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Lloyd. And I'm fully in support of this, as long as we got the votes. Any more questions?
Well, I think you have to to go to a 45-day
Yeah,
notice.
we introduce it now. And
Yeah, introduce it now, then at the end of 45 days, then you take action.
In the meantime, we draft some.
And you may have other applications.
And that provides for others who may want to apply for it.
Before that time, but
Any questions from the public? I see two of my constituents, Leo and Pat Mudrick, in the back from Clear Creek. They're been outstanding members of the Fire Safety Council. Union, Clear Creek, couldn't operate without them. Okay. So we have any action? We need a motion, yes.
I'll second the motion.
Yeah, fiscal impact to be paid from Fund 142.
This is to start the 45-day clock, so we can take action.
Authorize posting.
So authorize the public posting.
So we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Madam Clerk, will you close the vote?
Supervisor Chapman?
Aye.
Supervisor Alba?
Aye.
Supervisor Hinkle?
Aye.
Supervisor Hammond?
Aye.
Supervisor Curry? Thank you.
Well, thank you, guys. Thank you, Lloyd, for your presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad to see we're back on track again.
Me too.
All right, thank you, guys. And we're going to move on to H2, Capital Projects Fund.
All right, Mr. Chairman. You've got a memo from me dated June 3rd in your packet that outlines prior actions with regard to the financing that we've just recently completed. A follow-up to that, and I think it's important to note the history and the prior actions that have been taken going back to December 2004, culminating on June 4th when the proceeds were deposited into the county treasury. What I'm asking for today is a budget adjustment to account for the deposit of those funds in the county treasury and for the expenditure of two things. One, the funds for the financial advisory services and legal services that were required for the transaction, and also for funds to be used in inspections and investigations into the Riverside building that we are in negotiations for. That is my request. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions for Richard? Anybody from the public? Mr. Spencer?
We gave Felix 8 minutes and Lloyd 13 minutes.
Whatever. Felix, I knew you were talking too long.
I tried to go as short as possible.
I should have gaveled you.
You're a nice man.
Okay, that's it. What do you got to say?
Okay, I'm just going to read this because it was given to me in regards to this agenda item. What you knew, all of you, all 5, and we'll include these guys here. But I'm going to give the public what you didn't tell them. The cost of this loan will be in excess of $2 million. The LCPIC, the Lassen County Public Improvement Corporation, was formed because the current AmeriCal Civic Improvement Corporation was dissolved on November 2nd, 1992. The AmeriCal Civic Improvement Corporation had a $6 million loan balance, which we're going to find it. You're withholding the finances to Can We Help right now, but we'll get there. The county operated without any public benefit improvement corporation for 6 years, and the lenders changed 3 times. And this is all according to public record. I'd be glad to share with any one of you. Richard doesn't need it because, and you don't need it, and you don't need it because you were involved in the whole process the entire time. But I'd be glad to share the public documents with the 3 of you. Poorly managed is an understatement of activity like this. It's just really badly managed. The LCPIC was created out of necessity on June 26, 1998. The LCPIC has not met since 2008. The LCPIC is not a nonprofit, as stated by Richard Egan and also confirmed by the Franchise Tax Board. Financial reports are being deliberately withheld, but we'll get them, and I would be happy to share them with you. The Lassen County Public Improvement Corporation has never appeared on any Board of Supervisors agenda prior to May 26, 2015. Ever. But you all know that. Richard Egan paid delinquent corporate fees without authorization because it never appeared before you to authorize those fees. Richard Egan failed to file Form 100 with the Franchise Tax Board and in 2011 received a notice of suspension of the LCPIC. Again, I have documents if you want to see them. Richard Egan failed to file annual management reports to the lender from 2000 to 2005 and received numerous non-compliance letters from the lenders. County Council held up the release of the public documents until after the loan's funding. So that was intentional. But we do have them now. The fund accounts the county has decided to use do not exist. 151, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. 151-1511 doesn't exist in the budget. It is true that you did not reinvent the wheel, but have interpreted a long-standing secret debt. Richard Egan, Jim Chapman, and Bob Pyle have been involved in this since 1989. It wasn't a surprise like Mr. Chapman has very dramatically expressed over the weeks. And I wanted to tell you that money leaves a paper trail. And there's a lot of debt, I think, out there that eventually is going to come back on all of you.
Anybody else wish to speak on this agenda item? Seeing none, what's the pleasure of the board? We got a motion?
Well, this money was already wired in, right? It's already done.
Now we're going to watch it, Aaron. We're going to watch every penny of it.
Please do not interrupt.
Well, with that, then I would move approval of H2 to approve the increase of revenue and capital projects fund down 51-1511 in the amount of $4,080,000 and add appropriation in fund 151-1511 in the amount of $95,000 to pay for the cost of the lease purchase issuance and to pay for the county's due diligence for real property acquisition.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you call the board?
Supervisor Chapman?
Aye.
Supervisor Alba?
Aye.
Supervisor Handle?
Aye.
Supervisor Hammond?
Aye.
Supervisor Keller?
All right. Okay, we will move on to H3, real property acquisition.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are, this item, of course, deals with the 2950 Riverside Drive property that the county's been in negotiations for, dating again back to December of 2014. In order to move forward with the acquisition, there is a government code requirement that the agency post a notice of intention to purchase the real property 3 times in paper of general circulation in the county. So there's a resolution attached that outlines that. I'm asking for that approval. That includes the seller, the property, the purchase price, and a date at which the county will consider entering into an agreement to purchase that. I have taken the liberty of putting July 1, 2015, after the special meeting of this board, as a time to do that. The reason for that is that's if we don't do it, that's as soon as we can do it, and if we don't have a meeting until the following week. And I'd like to continue to move forward with this project.
Questions from the previous? Public have any questions? Mr. Spencer, come to the podium, state your name.
This is Spencer, CanWeHelp.com. Two things. Is any of this money going to be used secretly to buy property in Westwood, the big shop that they have behind the lot?
Is
Any of these proceeds going to be spent because you're in the process of buying more property that hasn't come before the board? And is any of this money going to be used to purchase that Westwood property?
I can respond to that if you'd like. Being a purchase of real property, there will be no proceeds from that. We will be purchasing the property, not selling property, so there won't be any proceeds generated from this transaction.
That didn't answer my question. But that's okay. We're looking into how you're going to pay for that Westwood property. You're trying to buy the shop over there, the big road shop. The road shop in Public Works, there's a big road shop behind the Shell station, and you're in the process of buying it. But that's okay. If you want to keep it secret, I won't say any more. Also,
It's true that we lease a building in Westwood behind the Shell station. It has absolutely nothing to do with this transaction.
I know, I was gonna say, what does that?
and
No,
you're
we have
trying,
to-
and you're process of buying it.
Isn't this resolution we're passing, that we have to do this in order to intend to buy property?
Yes.
Yeah.
And also, we discovered that this owner has been delinquent several times on taxes and is currently delinquent on her taxes, almost $14,000. Are we going to absorb that, or are you going to make her pay that prior to the sale?
We'll purchase this, of course, through a traditional escrow, and if there are any taxes delinquent or otherwise, they'll be collected through escrow and paid prior to us assuming ownership. Once the property is owned by the county, then it'll be exempt from taxation.
So you are going to disclose and try and get those taxes in escrow? You were aware of them?
The escrow, I don't know when you take that out of the purchase price.
He's not even aware of, he's not even aware of it.
It's immaterial to our transaction.
It's immaterial totally.
It's material if you absorb them.
We won't be absorbing it. If it's any sale, the seller will be charged that back toward his property. It's insignificant.
Yeah.
Okay. Aaron?
Rich, we have in here, in this resolution, a set amount of $1.3 million. Now, and of course, we're looking at not approving this until the 1st of July. There are a few of these variables that come up between now and then. Are we limiting ourselves? I mean, what if the price goes down, or what if the price goes up? I mean, are we stuck at this, is already set at this price, or how does that work out?
Well, the public agency negotiating to purchase property is somewhat of a public process. The 1.3 million is the price at which we have negotiated to purchase. Although we have this conundrum where we can't enter into a contract until we publish 3 times that our intent to do so. And so it's my expectation and belief that the price that we've negotiated at 1.3 million will be honored through a purchase contract that we'll bring back to the board on July 1st.
You're basically back to negotiations.
Any more questions? Pleasure of the board. Do you have a motion? Chair would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would make the motion that we, get the wording correct here, that we adopt the resolution and authorize the county administrative officer to perform any and all actions necessary to proceed with the acquisition of the real property located at 2950 Riverside Drive.
Thank you. Second? Second. We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Madam Clerk, would you pull the board?
Supervisor Chapman?
Aye.
Supervisor Alba?
Aye.
Supervisor Henkel?
Aye.
Supervisor Hammond?
Aye.
Supervisor Connor?
Okay, we'll move on to page 4.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, the next item deals with the Grants and Loans Division of the county, and in the wake of a recent high-profile business loan that has entered default and we're in the collections, and we've evaluated the value of continuing that program. Those discussions led to my meeting with our Director of Planning and Building Services and our Director of Health and Social Services, Maureen Anderson, Mel Brawley, about a reorganization of how we administer the CDBG program. Those meetings led to our recommendation, along with discussions we had at the board some months ago, to move the CDBG function essentially from the Planning and Building Services to the Health and Social Services Department under the control. The primary reason for doing so is that the board's direction has been to move away from the business lending side of CDBG and move more towards the other activities that are eligible under the program, such as housing assistance and those sorts of things that fit much better in the Health and Social Services Department. They're the same types of clients that they routinely see. They've got a more robust staff there, and that is our recommendation to do that. Both Ms. Brawley and Mr. Anderson are here to comment on that. But if there's any questions, we'd be happy to discuss that further.
Any questions for Richard's report?
Yeah, my first question was, does she have the staff to handle that?
Good point, and she will. Ms. Aguilera will be transferred to that department in order to facilitate it.
Bill, did you want to add anything to this?
I just want to say that Jen and I have met a couple times, and she's started attending some of our system of care meetings, and I'm really excited about the prospect of having CDBG as part of Health and Social Services, because we have a whole lot of low-income folks and people who have special needs, and I think it's going to present some great opportunities for exciting, cool projects for us to do, and then I think a lot of the project that she's already involved in will benefit our clients, and that information will get directly to our clients more than it has in the past. So I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be a cool fit.
And I want to say that, I echo, I'm sorry, Maureen Anderson, Planning and Building Services. Richard kind of covered it, but I just want to add that, it definitely is a better fit over there, continuing on with basically forgivable loans and the grants especially, and it just ties a lot better with Mel's umbrella of folks, and they do already have the expertise over there. I don't know about who's going to be doing what, but Mel's folks really have a handle on these kind of programs similar to what Jenna does, so it's going to be a good fit. And I'll miss Jenna's face, but I know I'll be seeing her in her future, and we'll continue to have interaction with different projects that we do over time. So.
Anybody else wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, what would be the pleasure? Receive report, I guess, no action at this point.
Yeah, it's done. It's an informational item under authority with regard to this grant.
So when will this transition take place?
Officially, it'll be as of the beginning of the fiscal year. Practically, I know Jen has already been working on that. Officially, the 1st of July.
Okay, we will move on to item 5, issue information from board supervisor.
Wow, we're moving right along.
One thing I wanted to mention to the board is that as we move forward with the real estate property acquisition and then eventually the improvements to the courthouse, I would invite maybe a couple of the board members to go to MoDOT County and check out the elevator that they installed on their courthouse, and maybe Aaron's already been there.
I have seen it.
But if you haven't, that's that kind of concept, I think, is what we'll be looking at for our courthouse, and I think Mr. Shaw would be happy to take a couple supervisors up there at some point and look at that, and maybe look at some of the improvements they did up there. More to
How
come
much
on
did
that.
it cost you to do that?
I'm sorry.
How much did it cost him to do that? Do you remember? I think it was at the PSA two,
Yeah.
the MODOC supervisor that was there, said, used the figure around $400,000, but it wasn't.
I don't think it was that much. I think it was in excess of 200. And I heard the
Not
dollar
just for the
amount.
elevator, a lot of painting. They did
Right.
other stuff.
Maybe the whole project might have been 400. But I think the elevator was probably around 200.
And I thought that was kind of expensive for an elevator. $200,000 sounds a lot more realistic. I think when City Hall put in their elevator a few years ago, it was like between $100,000 and $150,000 for theirs.
Right. The other thing, we had a budget, our first budget meeting of the year last week. We're beginning that process. We've just about gotten all the requests in from the department. We're compiling those, and we will have another budget meeting once they're compiled with all those requests. Let's see, I attended CSAC, Excess Insurance Authority Directors Meeting last Thursday and Friday. There's, in terms of the general liability insurance costs, there's actually some positive news. The EIA has been able to secure some short and long-term reinsurance at pretty favorable costs that will be reflected. I don't expect that in general liability realm we'll see any increases this year, so that's a good thing. That was also what was a good meeting in Sacramento last week. Let's see, the final, help me out, Tony, the final order on the sage grouse was issued 2 weeks ago, is that you?
Yeah, the Bureau of Land Management has released the final environmental impact statement for the sage grouse, and that is out for public comment. The board, you may recall, it submitted substantial comments on the draft, and then we also have an acting MOU with the BLM regarding coordination and participation in that, and we submitted comments, and it's my understanding that the proposed action is consistent with, for instance, on grazing policies that were already in place because of the recent BLM range resource management plan was adopted, I think, in 2008. And so most of the things that are incorporated in this EIS for our region are already being undertaken. So the burden of responsibility has been put on BLM staff to do monitoring. If you need information, feel free to come by my office and I can get it out to you. Yeah. It's 1,000 pages of easy reading.
Right, and I think the other significant factors are probably limits or eliminates the ability for alternative energy generation in those areas, which, that is what it is. Good. I think that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Richie. Next item is the public hearing at 11 o'clock, so we will recess until 11.
Take our break.
This is our 10:35 break.
You want?
Public hearing at 11 o'clock. Staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. Maury Anderson, Planning and Building Services. Before you is file number 316.06. And the project is to consider amendments to the Lassen County Code Title 16 and 18, adding sections 1604.050, compliance with notes on record, final, and parcel maps, and section 18.102.100, compliance with mitigation monitoring and reporting requirements. Said amendments would clarify and provide enforceability of notes on maps, on record parcel maps and final maps, or on adopted mitigation monitoring plans. The amendments will not change the zoning of any parcel of land, and the project is exempt from CEQA. And staff will recall about a month ago, we were having
less than a month
ago, we were having some debate during the Cummings subdivision debate, and it was Mr. Egan's suggestion that we come back and fortify what notes mean on maps. And the discussion, I think, at that time was related to remainder parcels and making sure that they were in the future subdivided when that was the deal that was made at the time. And so this would affect that change. I'm in concurrence with Mr. Egan, obviously,
There's been discussion about this numerous times over the years, most recently, as you show in your packet in 2014, and it never seemed to ever come to fruition, but it's really amazing how when you want to actually do something and it's ready to go, and it's short and sweet, this came back like in record time, and I'm really happy.
Glad you're happy.
with that, I'll entertain a motion.
I was the one that had the issue during the Cummings thing, because having been involved with the 1998 and the 2002, I think it was, map that came through there, and they basically agreed to do what they were going to do, and then leave the rest alone, because that was the trade-off, get these small parcels, and then you come back and start breaking up the remainder parcel. I mean, how do you enforce that? How do you even have the knowledge of that? I mean, unless you go back and dig that out of the file. So I think this is a way to, make it a little bit more bulletproof. And, a deal's a deal, and you should be able to come back and change it later. So I'm happy.
Did you conclude your staff report?
I did. Well, he did.
Any questions from the staff report, by the board? Any questions of staff report from the public? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, is there any new correspondence?
No, sir.
Anybody wish to speak in favor? Seeing none, anybody wish to speak in opposition? Seeing none, bring it back to the board and close the public hearing at 11:03.
Correct motion would be a motion to introduce. It'll require a second hearing and subsequent day.
Well, if you have a public hearing, you can introduce and adopt the same day based on a public hearing, but it would be better to go ahead and do it
I
Tuesday.
believe it's going to require a second hearing on this one.
A second hearing?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Whatever council wants to do.
Whatever council wants to do. Okay.
I would move, Mr. Chairman, that we introduce the ordinance and conduct the second public hearing at the appropriate time.
I would say.
Introduced by title only.
Yeah, introduced by title only.
All right, second.
Yeah, good work.
Any more discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the board.
Supervisor Chapman?
Aye.
Supervisor Alba?
Aye.
Supervisor Handle?
Aye.
Supervisor Hammond?
Aye.
Supervisor Lassen?
All right. Okay, that concludes the meeting.
Look outside, it's like,
Wow.